the Irish Mags Show. It is episode number 80, a landmark episode for us, lads. My name is Paul. I'll be your host for today, and I am joined not only by Mr. Alan Williamson, who's been here for the majority of the 80 episodes,
Yes.
not only by Mr. Chris O'Martin, who's been here for a bunch of the 80 episodes
Some of
when
Come
it
on.
suits him. But we've also brought in a special returning guest and a friend of the Irish Mags who, let's face it, everybody knows him, but I'll introduce him anyway. It is, of course, former Newcastle United player, former Republic of Ireland player, and now BBC and Newcastle NUFC commentator, Mr. John Anderson. John, welcome back to the Irish Mags Show. Great to have you.
Welcome back.
Evening, boys. How are you? Good to be back.
Glad yourself.
I
Great
don't know.
to
I
have you
mean,
back.
I assume you're sitting in Newcastle. It's very warm over here. It was about 27 degrees down in Galway where I am. I don't know what it's like in Dublin, lads, but I have been melting all day. I'm just not built for this heat at all.
Well, it's usually very cold up here in the northeast of England, but it's been 29 degrees today, and they
Even
reckon
more,
it's going to hit 32 tomorrow. So we'll wait and see.
Wow. Nice.
I tell you what, that would have been some conditions for Sam Fender last weekend because I was over for it, and it was a tough enough day as it was for the length of time I was there. Never mind if there was 32 degrees of heat belting down on us. But that was a hell of a weekend in Newcastle. Were you out and about, John? Actually, did you see much of the crowd?
I was out and about. I didn't go. The other half went, and she said it was great. She said it was brilliant. I didn't go myself, but the amount of people that were about, all the everybody wearing black and white as well. It looked spectacular, to be fair.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just the whole place was buzzing. It was like a game day, but like a special kind of a game day. I don't know. And as you said, just all the black and white kits and everything, and the atmosphere in the stadium was just outrageous as well. So, yeah, we need more of those gigs. The more, the better. And it helps that he's a local lad as well. He walked out onto the stage to the Champions League music, and I was gone. I was like, no, we're done here. And then Dan Byrne suddenly is walking around with the Carabao Cup in his hands up in the stage. That's just too much, lads. I mean, we hadn't even had a song out yet. So, yeah.
And of course, you had no drink on board either when you were doing all this. You were stone cold sober, weren't you?
I wouldn't mean it that kind of thing at all, John.
He doesn't drink anymore, John. He doesn't drink anymore.
He took the
fully
pledge.
retired now. I've had to go and make my confirmation again just to get off it. Judging by how long that lasted last time, it's probably not going to last too long this time. Moving swiftly on away from my general alcoholism, I must tell you all that the Irish Mags are proudly sponsored by Flagman Ireland, who specialise in quality, digitally printed, personalised flags, bunting, tablecloths, table flags and hand wavers. The online store also stocks and sells a wide range of international and domestic flags, including the Irish Mags flag selection and their heavy woven government Irish tricolour. Hit flagsireland.com for all your flag needs, because we've done it many times. John, I suppose, look, most people would know you by now. As I said, you're a former Newcastle player. Spent, 10 years, the bones of 10 years at the club. Obviously, have played for the Republic of Ireland. We're in that famous 1988 World Cup squad. We've done all of that before, so we won't embarrass you again. But particularly, I think what we'd love to talk to you about now, the season is over. I suppose it's been a long season. I remember the Southampton game, the opening game of the season. Fabian Schär's red card feels like 10 years ago. Genuinely, like it feels like the longest season ever. But was it the longest season ever for you, or has it flown by in comparison to others?
Yeah, I think it has been a long season. You know, you go back to that Southampton game. We didn't play particularly well. Southampton played well. They gifted us a goal. To be fair, trying to play out from the back. And I suppose the first quarter of the season was really strange because we were getting results and we weren't playing particularly well, and you wondered which way the season was going to go. And then everything just seemed to fall into gear, really. You know, I think when you look back at this season and how strange it's probably been the greatest season in the club's history. Has to be, you know, to win the first domestic cup competition in 70 years, to qualify for the Champions League. I think if you, back in August and prior to that Southampton game, if you had offered that to anybody in black and white, they would have snapped your hand off. They would have said, yes, thanks very much. That will do very, very nicely. So it turned out to be an unbelievable season. You know, there was so many great individual performances as well from players, but collectively as well. You know, they finished the season really, really strong. Disappointing on the last day that, you know, Everton turned us over and all of a sudden everybody became Manchester United supporters. But prior to the game, everybody hated Manchester United, but then everybody loved Manchester United for what they did. So it was, it's been a remarkable season. I think it's one that will live long in the memory for an awful lot of people.
Definitely, and obviously, the cup final has made, like, I guess it was, the season was already legendary by what, February or March, whenever that cup final was. So, just the fact that we won that and obviously then finished off the Champions League, a lot of people, including some people on this podcast, a little bit of me as well, were panicking quite a lot, John, at different points in the season, but particularly we went on that amazing run, let's call it December, and then the wheels slightly came off. I think the Bournemouth match was the real alarm setter for a lot of people. And I mean, there was a point then when we were 12th, were we even 14th? I remember 12th being a low point, and it kind of felt, you know, oh shit, are we stuck here now? And even though, you know, that gap between 12th and 4th was like 3 points for all those weeks, did you ever have that same level of panic or that same level of I don't know, pessimism, I guess, that, you know, or did you maintain, like, Eddie will do the job and we'll get back to where we're meant to be?
No, I have to admit, after we lost at Brentford away, and the manner in which we lost, I wondered what was happening, where we were going. We weren't playing particularly well. We were conceding goals. The performance levels weren't great. And whatever was said and whatever switch was turned on, after that Brentford game, we went on a miraculous run. Our performance levels went through the roof. You know, the one thing about this squad of players in this side this season is the resilience that they've showed, you know, the togetherness that they've all had. They were all in it together. They rolled their sleeves up. And what they achieved was remarkable. You know, prior to the Brentford game and after the Brentford game, I remember coming back from the Brentford game on the train and we were talking, coming back and saying, this could be a long season. You know, we just don't know where we're going. There's no consistency. It was a phase of the season where you were turning up at games and you weren't too sure what you were going to get. You know, the one thing about this side over the last couple of years was you were turning up in games and knew exactly what you were going to get out of them. You just weren't too sure prior to that Brentford game which way games were going to go, what level of performance we were going to put in. The high press, the energy levels just didn't seem to be there. Now, as I said, whatever was said after the Brentford game, it all just seemed to reappear. It just came back into focus. Everybody rolled their sleeves up, got dug in, and turned it around. And they deserve the utmost credit for that. You know, manager, coach and staff, and the players. You know, the players, it's difficult when you're in those situations to all of a sudden just turn it on the way they have. It's not like a light switch where you can just flick it on and off, but they managed to do it and they went on that incredible run. And I suppose the run in the cup really helped as well. And the performance in the cup final. The performance in the cup final was unbelievable. You know, they absolutely battered Liverpool. They were head and shoulders the best side in the game from start to finish. They were incredible. Their energy levels. I think if you were going to beat Liverpool, you need everybody on the day to be at the top of their form. Everybody needed to play to the highest level they had, and that was the case. There wasn't one player in that cup final who you would say didn't really do it. I know the numbers have changed, but from 1 to 11, and you throw in a couple of subs as well. You know, they were incredible to a man, and it was an incredible day. It was really strange being at Wembley when the final whistle went, because we're so used to being there and saying, "Oh well, we've been beaten. We'll just go and have a few drinks now, and you know, this is what we do." But then the final whistle went, and everybody went, "Jesus, we've won. What do we do now? You know, how do you react to it?
How do we behave?
Well, we're going to have a few drinks now, and this time it'll be an awful lot happier." That seemed to be the case. There just seemed to be a strange feeling of, well, we've never been here before, so we don't really know how to react to this. And it was incredible to see. I mean, the amount of grown men and women that you see and crying their eyes out was unbelievable. You know, we took, I don't know how many went down, but it seemed like there was 100,000 down at Wembley, and it was, well, we're here for the weekend. It'll be a great old weekend, and you know, we'll enjoy the crack and one thing and another. But to actually win it was remarkable. And as I said, it was thoroughly deserved, because they were absolutely, to a man, they were outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, John, your performance as well, commentating, really made it as well, because I went back and watched the full game again with you guys commentating, and it was your call for Isak's goal. Just the emotion that came out of you was sensational. Honestly, it was just like, you should always be co-commentating and colour commentating on those games. Always. It just brought because like we were three of us were over there in London, and we were literally in disbelief, like pure joy. But then, like you said, kind of coupled with pure disbelief, plus the fact that we had many drinks beforehand and throughout the game. We just really didn't know what to do, standing outside the pub, kind of going, did we just win? Yeah, I think, yeah, we did. And everybody driving by in London, Chelsea fans, Arsenal fans, they were all delighted for us. Everyone was delighted for Newcastle winning that day, because like they all felt, this club deserves a trophy. But like,
I have to say afterwards as well, the lads who were there from Liverpool doing the commentary, and the Liverpool supporters that we seen afterwards were absolutely brilliant. You know, they said, no qualms about it. Best side won. You deserved it. Well done. You know, your performance was absolutely outstanding. And it was just a great day. And I think that propelled us forward to the rest of the season in the league as well. You know, I think it showed that we've always been able to compete with the best in this league. Even at times when you've come up a little bit short, people say, "Oh, well, you gave it your best." You know, we did everything that we could to get a result, but unfortunately on the day they were just that little bit better than us. But you couldn't say that at Wembley. You know, from kick-off to the final whistle, and it got a little bit nervy. Of course, it did when they scored and added on time, but I never really felt that Liverpool then had enough to really get back into it. But I just thought on the day it was remarkable. It was unbelievable, and Dan Burns' header was just sensational. You know, it's an absolutely fabulous header.
Sheer
ball whizzed in, and he just gets up and he powers it. And he'd be the first to admit he should score more goals. You know, the chances that he's had this season, but all of a sudden that one was just right on the money. You know, forehead bang, bottom corner.
You couldn't have.
And if he never scores another goal again, that'll be.
You could do that. You could do that 99 times, and he'd just go over the bar. He'd miss it. You know, so he'd get tackled. But that was absolutely perfection. Yeah, it was meant to happen. John, on the day from watching the game, because we all have our opinions, but who did you think was the man of the match for the game?
All
of them. Everybody.
You know, I said after the game, I said, it's really, really unfair to single any one individual out because of the level of performance by everybody. I thought, to a man, they were sensational. I really did. You know, Isak's goal, that wasn't easy. You know, it was a great finish. It was a wonderful finish. Tonali in the middle of the park. Tonali was sensational. He really was. His work rate, the way he senses danger. Not only is he good on the ball, but when we haven't got the ball, he senses danger. He always seems to be in the right place. He always seems to know where the opposition are going to go with it, and he just picks it off. Dan Bourne got man of the match and got no qualms with that at all. I mean, it was a fabulous header. But I just thought, to a man, I thought they were unbelievably good. They were absolutely brilliant.
I have to ask
can
you,
go
John,
through that team.
I really want to take a peek behind the curtain here, John. Just quickly, when you're talking about Dan Burn, so sometimes you hear commentators, talking retrospectively or how they plan for things to happen, and sometimes, when you hear a very famous line, sometimes it is a little bit pre-planned, or you're like, oh, if this happens, because this will be a special thing if it does happen. Like if if a player scores their 200th goal or against the Royal Club, or something remarkable. Just between yourself and Razor, did that even come up where we're like, if Dan Burn scores, what are we going to say?
We never even thought about that. We never discussed that at all. But it's a little bit like everything after the event, really. I suppose you think, well, it was probably written in the stars. It's a great story, Dan Burn. His story is great. Yeah. He was let go. He went and played non-league. He went and played lower league. He never gave up on his dream. He always believed in himself. And then all of a sudden, he gets to play for the one side that he's always wanted to play for, always dreamt of playing for, and thought all his dreams had come true. Then all of a sudden, he gets to play in a cup final. Doesn't get any better. Well, it does get better, actually, because then you go and you scored a goal in that cup final, that cup final that you win. It's a real Roy of the Rover story. And I think it's great for young kids as well. I think if you ever want to see somebody who doesn't give up on their dream, I think young kids should look at Dan Bourne and go, well, he's never given up on it. He believed that he could still do it, even though he was let go by clubs and he had to go and do his trade in non-league and lower leagues. If he can do it, I can do it. So I think it's an unbelievable story, and I think it's great for all young kids to make sure that you keep your dreams alive, because it can happen for you.
Yeah.
It's I always think back to the time he was released. Was it released from Fulham when they were in the Championship?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was like imagine you're kind of released from a club who at the time they on the fringes of getting not a search for promotion. Let's say they weren't great. It must be such a kick, or like a kick to your confidence. And then obviously he was at Brighton, and he was getting a bit of games, but not a whole lot. To be where he is now, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's been said so many times, but it is just a phenomenal story, and there'll have to be a documentary made about the man at some point.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then he goes from scoring in a cup final, and then he gets an international cap. 33 years of age.
Yeah, and
he would probably have thought that those days were beyond them.
Yeah.
And then he goes and he gets caps, and he's in the squad again. It's a rags to riches story, really. It's phenomenal, and fair play to him as well. I think you've got to give him so much credit for believing in himself and keeping the faith in himself, because it's very easy for you to all of a sudden think, well, this is never going to happen. But he kept the faith. He believed in what he was doing and thought the opportunity would come along. And it's one thing for the opportunity to come along, but it's another thing to grab it and grasp it. And that's exactly what he's done. And I think he deserves all the credit in the world.
100%. And I tell you what, he's not only proved a lot of people wrong, but like repaid a lot of faith as well, I suppose, like in the likes of Eddie Howe and people at the club. We just had our Irish Mags Player of the Season and Young Player of the Season awards, John, like within our group. So we get all the hundreds of our members to vote. There was like 0.7% of it divides. So Dan Burn just missed out by literally less than 1%. To another man I want to ask you about, which is Sandro Tonali, who won the Irish Mags Player of the Year award. You were talking about Brentford, John, and we were, you were kind of talking about there was that moment where things kind of flipped. a lot of people have attributed that to the decision by Eddie Howe to put Sandro, I suppose, in that 6 role, take Bruno out of it, push him forward. Is it that simple? Obviously, look, we know how good Sandro Tonali is, but is it as simple as that? That was a big turning point in amidst the resolve of the entire unit as a team.
I said earlier in the season, and I got criticised for it by saying that the balance in that midfield wasn't right, and everybody took by that I meant that they weren't good players. I never said they weren't good players. Individually, they were good players, but the balance wasn't right. I always felt Tonali should go into that central role where he could dictate things, where he was always your outlet, push Guimaraes to the right side, Joe Linton left side. And from the moment that he did that, the balance just seemed an awful lot better. They seemed to... The problem prior to it was they weren't complementing each other. Now, that's not saying that they weren't good players, and people would go and say, oh, well, good players should be able to play with each other no matter where they play. But it doesn't work out that way. You've got good players, but you've got to play them in the right areas of the pitch. And since he took Tonali and put him in that central role, moved Guimaraes right side and Joe Linton on that left side, everything just seemed to click into place. And from that moment on, it looked a different side. It looked a totally different midfield as well. Tonali is a machine. His energy levels. There's been games this season where he's running as quick in the 96th minute as he was in the opening minute of the game. His vision in the game, he passes it nice and simple. He doesn't complicate it. He does the easy stuff really, really well. Very rarely gives the ball away. But, a lot of people watch players when they're on the ball and what they do with the ball. And they go, oh, he's a good player. Uses, blah, blah, blah. I've got a tendency to watch players when they haven't got the ball. Yeah. To see where they are and the areas they pick up and if they sense danger. Tonali, it just seems to be instinctive to him. It's a natural instinctive thing. When we haven't got the ball, he gets himself into areas where the ball always seems to arrive. Now, you can't teach players that. That's an instinctive thing. And he's been brilliant. And people will say, oh, well, he owed us this from what happened last season and one thing and another. That may well be the case, but, he's still got to go and he's got to do it. And he's got to do it on a weekly basis. And you would say that his performance levels this season haven't dropped below 7 out of 10. Majority of times they're 8 and 9 out of 10. I go back to the cup final where, Dan Bourne, but I thought Tonali on that day was absolutely sensational. The ground that he covered, the areas of the pitch, he just sensed everything. And he's just a top player. That's you can throw superlatives about him all you want, but you can see he's just a very, very gifted footballer. And as I say, from a defensive point of view, he's just been, for me, he's been sensational. And I think he's got it right with your choice. I don't think there was I think the sentimental side of it would have been to give it to Dan Bourne, and nobody would have a qualm about that at all. But I think if you go on the season as a whole and you take every individual performance on a whole, you would have to give it to Tonali.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, John, like his defensive stuff and sensing danger, he always seems to be. He's never breathing heavy, even in the 96th minute.
Yeah.
If you look back at AC Milan, he's played 70 games for them and scored 7 goals. He's played 44 games for us and scored 5 goals. So he's even contributing, scoring goals like the one against United, a couple of goals, that classy goal where it was kind of a cross, but maybe it wasn't a cross. Maybe it was just a brilliant strike. I don't know. I think, who was that against? Tottenham, was it? Was it against Spurs? Or no? Hang on.
Brentford?
You already got
Brentford,
yeah. Brentford, yeah.
Brentford,
So,
yeah.
I think that's where, like, he's given us so much joy both ways. He's defensively sound. He's made our midfield, dare I say it, world class. And then he's popping up with classy goals. I'm just kind of hoping that he gets a chance to take a couple of free kicks next season, because I think he's pretty good at free kicks as well.
I'm going to take one opportunity here to let Adam Williamson do his final ever "I told you so."
I said at the start of this season, Tonali would be our most important player. He'd blow Bruno out of the water. Not that Bruno isn't a world-class player, I just knew Tonali was going to be absolutely sensational, because the hype surround. I still don't understand how we actually signed him without anyone else coming in and trying to rob that deal, because £55 million for him is a joke of a bargain. Like, we could sell him now for £150 million. We're not going to now by any stretch, but unbelievable footballer. He's only going to get better as well.
Zero doubt at all. And just for the
Well,
record,
now that
John,
you've said that, who are they going to bring in this season?
there you go.
No pressure on you now.
Yeah. And we're going to talk
I'm
about.
telling you.
I'm going to ask you about transfers as well. So we hold that thought for me.
I'll hold it.
Because I'm looking forward to that part. Just for the record, we voted Tino Livramento as our young player of the season. That's 2 seasons in a row. I think Lewis Hall would have been up there had he not been injured. It's a disgrace that neither of them have been put in the Premier League top 6 young player of the year nominees. You know, Ethan Nwaneri's in there. He's been good and he's young, but he's been a cameo player, to be honest. So,
Miles Lewis Skelly got in with 3 red cards.
Yeah, 3 red cards only. It's shocking that neither of those lads have gone in. But yeah, looking forward to seeing both of those next season. We get Lewis Hall back flying as well, because again, he was a key player all season. We lost him when? Was it January before the?
Yeah, I mean, he had a great season, Hall, and it was unfortunate when he picked the injury up. Livramento, you know, since going to left back, if a neutral came in and watched him playing, they'd go, "Oh well, he's played left back all his career." You know, he seems that comfortable. He's a little bit reminds us Dennis Irwin, you know, naturally right-footed, but just so comfortable at left back, but could play right back as well. And Livramento has been, if anything, he's probably looked better at left back, and he's got forward more and joined in more and looked more comfortable doing it from left back than he has at right back. And the 2 young boys who, 22, Livramento's 22, I think, Hall's 20, 21. You know, so the boys who've got big futures ahead of them, and they can only go from strength to strength.
Especially when there was criticism, wasn't there, when they were signed? People were like, "Why are we
doing this?
dropped?" Because, like, I know Tino went for 40 million euros, 30 million, and Hall obviously was a loan, but then there was the obligation for the 30 million. But that is
they look bargains now, you know. Eyebrows were raised a little bit, but now when you look back, you think, well, great bit of business, you know.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And they could prove to be real long-term bargains, because they could be here at this football club for a long time to come.
Yeah, and I remember, speaking of I told you so, do you remember Alan Crisho when we did a predictions in January, and I said within the next 12 months, both of these lads will be linked with, you know, the top clubs, and that's where, you know, you're looking at Man City. They've obviously been showing an interest in Tino. Hall at one point was linked with Liverpool, but you know, there's no need for these players to go. I don't think we need the cash. I don't think they need to aspire to go any bigger or whatever. So no, I don't. Crisho, I don't think we want to see that at all.
Chelsea is linked with everybody. Every day I go on the paper, every single player that anyone is looking at is going to
Chelsea let both of them go.
Yeah.
You know, they were both at Chelsea, and Chelsea let them both go.
Yeah, it's their own loss now. I mean, Chelsea's just it's gone silly with Chelsea. I mean, I saw a good joke. You know, they were talking about this Club World Cup, and there was a stadium 30% full when Chelsea were playing, and somebody said they should have let Chelsea bring the rest of their squad, and they would have filled the other half of the stadium. It's just getting silly. Right then, quickly, John. Just sticking with the season just gone, then before we move on to looking ahead. obviously the cup final is there, right? But just for your own, obviously, look, working weekend, every single weekend, doing the games, doing the commentary at Razor. I was going to ask you for a couple of highlights of the season. Is there anything that stands out in your mind, particularly, when you're working, you're up there in the gantry, things that really stand out when you're looking back over the last 9-10 months?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the cup finals are real standout, but that would be everybody's standout. We were, as I said already, we were absolutely sensational. I think the two semi-final games against Arsenal, were unbelievable. People look at the fact that we won the cup final, but they don't realise the sides that we had to beat to get there as well. We've beaten all the top sides to win that cup final. But the two games against Arsenal, the two semi-final games, were absolutely sensational. Beating Manchester United as well, of course, is always a highlight. It's a real strange season to try and dissect, really, because I spoke earlier about the way we started the season and performances prior to the Brentford game, and you weren't really too sure which way the season was going to go. And the highlight for me was getting the point at Brighton. Not the greatest performance in the world, but that point proved so crucial, so important to us. So if we hadn't got that point down there, we might be having a different conversation. But that was pivotal. But the cup final and the two semi-final games against Arsenal, home and away, were unbelievable. I just thought that the performance at the Emirates in the first leg of that cup semi-final was tactically, I don't think Eddie Howe could have got it any better. He just got his tactics spot on. And yeah, they were the two highlights, three highlights, and as I say, the Brighton game, because the Brighton game was pivotal in where we finished in the league in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't disagree, particularly that Emirates performance. It's not just the fact that we beat these teams and played the way we played. We went up against Arsenal in London, and people were kind of thinking, well, if we can get away with a 1-0 loss here, we'll be all right. We went up against Liverpool in Wembley, who were by far the best team in the league all season.
Yeah.
And completely, it's adding that to the achievement. It's unbelievable. And final question, any particular goal that you recall celebrating? Losing your shit is an extreme point, but is there a particular goal where you just kind of, it stands out in terms of the reaction, the elation?
The Tonali goal, I just didn't know what to say, because I'm still trying to figure out whether he's trying to cross it or whether it's a shot. Now, he said he was just trying to hammer it across goal. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, I don't know. But it's an unbelievable strike. To hit a ball that cleanly from that angle, from where he was incredible. It was a sensational strike. And obviously the two cup final goals, they will live long in the memory. Dan Burns was a classic header, and Isak's finish, that wasn't the easiest finish in the world either. Murphy does great back post, heads it back down to him, and he just volleys it. He caresses it.
Yeah.
The thing with Isak is you watch him scoring goals, he caresses everything into the net. It's just an unbelievable finish. So they would be the ones. Jacob Murphy got one as well. He did the identical same thing. I can't remember who it was against now, and he's just leathered it into the top of the net. And by the way, he's had a sensational season. He's had an incredible season. Can he replicate that? Only time will tell. But he scored goals. He's created goals for other people. It's been a sensational season from the boy.
Oh, here's the worry, like for everybody here and everyone listening. Here's the worry. We're gonna go, like Paul, you're saying, we're going to talk about a few transfers, right? But this team and its resilience and sticking together, John, and pulling it all back together and getting into the Champions League. Some of them do know that they're going to be second place in their position, or they do know they're going to be sold on. So that camaraderie that we've all built together in the squad, looks like Jacob Murphy. I mean, it must be hard for him. I'm sure he doesn't read the reports, but Newcastle are looking for a right winger. I mean, he's kind of thinking, well, why isn't it me? I've done a great job all season. He's played out of his skin. So, but like every Newcastle fan, and maybe I don't know what it is like up there in actually Newcastle, John, but I think Jacob Murphy deserves to at least get, his first team place next season, no matter who we sign.
I think an awful lot depends on what happens in pre-season.
Mm.
I think pre-season's huge for a lot of these players. If new players come in and they hit the ground running, and we've been really fortunate with players that we've brought in because they've all hit the ground running. There hasn't been one who, you say, oh, I'm not too sure. They've settled in straight away. I'm not trying to be harsh here, but they've been brilliant last season. All them players were absolutely magnificent. But if you want to go to the next step, if you want to take that next step to the next level, you can have no sentiment. You've got to be looking to bring better quality players in. I go back to when the year we got promoted under Kevin, when David Kelly scored all the goals, and he was absolutely sensational. And Kevin said, "Sorry, son, but where we're going, you're not going to be there." And sometimes you've got to make them decisions, and it is harsh. Of course, it is harsh because of what these players have achieved last season and the performance levels that they put in. But you've got to make them decisions if you want to go to the next step. You look at Alex Ferguson at Manchester United when they were winning all those league titles. He made them decisions. He got rid of players. He brought other players in, and you've got to do that. Now, that's not to say that I don't know how many of the starting 11 against Everton will start the opening day game at Aston Villa, because we will wait and see. But I just think you can have no sentiment. If you want to go to the next level, those big decisions have got to be made.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal. It is brutal, but you don't improve by staying still, if that makes, especially in this game, right? And there's no guarantee that a player can continue that form season on season. So we need depth. John, you talked about it there a while ago. There was moments where the intensity dropped. There was tiredness. It's just so clear.
I think all you've got to do is look at games that we've been chasing this season where things haven't been going right, and Eddie Howe has made substitutions. And many of them substitutes have actually come on and made an impact in games and changed games. We've got nobody who, the Everton game at the end of the season is a prime example. He's made all the changes because it wasn't working, but it didn't work because those players didn't come on and they didn't impact the game, and the flow of the game never changed. So that's why you need the depth of squad. You need to be able to bring in better quality players. We're going to be playing an awful lot more games next year with Champions League games, and you need better quality players that you can, say, bring off the bench. The one thing Villa did this season, they had a depth of squad, but not only did they have the depth of squad, they had a quality of depth there where they were able to compete as well. I know they didn't, and people will be saying, "Oh, well, they didn't get Champions League football and whatnot." And no, that's fair enough, but they've still got a better depth to their squad than what we've got at this present time.
Yeah, they do.
It's true, yeah. That's a perfect segue to bring us in for a 5-minute conversation about transfers, John. because it is silly season. We've already had one mini transfer window pass by,
Crap.
and we
Yeah.
obviously not much has happened, but I think the realists among us all can agree that it's still very early. Preseason isn't even nearby. There's plenty of time. We obviously have a lot of upheaval at board level, at executive level, and so on. So there's a lot going on, but nonetheless, a lot of people are freaking out, John. I think it's the simplest way of putting it. When they see other clubs doing things and us not doing things, it's a very much a sense of deja vu. I just wanted to pick your brain on, the transfer strategy here. We just mentioned there when Alan mentioned about how we even got Tonali, and it kind of caught everybody off guard. We had instances where we were linked with Hugo Ekitike or João Pedro, and then Alexander Isak lands in. We were linked with Nico Barella, I think, because Steve Nixon was spotted in Milan. Brings back Sandro Tonali instead. When you look at the strategy, are you confident there's a lot of things happening that isn't being spoke about as much? We all hear about Elanga, we all hear about Mbuemo, we all hear about João Pedro, Gehi, usual things. But do you suspect there's a lot more to it in terms of things, transfers and targets we've no idea about?
I think so, because I think they go about their business in a very professional and quiet manner. The speculation goes on about certain players, Elango, Pedro, they're all there, they're all highlighted. But then all of a sudden, you wake up one morning and we've signed somebody and you go, where did he come from? They're very efficient in the way that they go about it. So there's no way in the world I would be panicking yet. And people have jumped on the bandwagon and said at the end of the season, Eddie Howe said that he wanted his business to be done early. And because your Manchester Cities and your Liverpools have been going and spending money, people are starting to panic a little bit. But I wouldn't be panicking yet. I think there'll be somebody, my opinion, there'll be somebody from left field who'll and you'll go, whoa, never seen that happening, never seen that coming. And I think it's the right way to do it. So no, I wouldn't panic yet. I think they need another right-sided centre-back because Cher's been decent, but was never the quickest. He's now 34 years of age. Botman is back. You would hope when he gets a full pre-season under his belt that he can get back to the player that everybody knows that he is. We've gone on about the right-sided job with Jacob Murphy. He but we need another centre forward as well. And the difficult thing about the centre forward situation is that you're going to bring a centre forward in who's going to be second choice. They're going to be playing second fiddle. And people go, oh, well, he can play the two of them together. But why would he want to change a formation that's been so successful for him since he's come into the football club? He plays a certain formation. And even when he went to the 5 at the back in the cup games, he still didn't play with 2 up top and he still didn't play with a 10. So it's an interesting conundrum because Isak will always be the number 1. So we will wait and see. But am I panicking? No, because I think, as I said, they'll go about their business in the right manner.
Yeah. They're just saying about João Pedro. Not only is he a lot of money, but coming in as he wants to be the main striker. Of course, a lot of strikers are all ego-based. They're all confidence-based. I know it from being a striker before. So do you, Al. Top scorer boy. But no one's going to replace Isak, like you're saying, John. But I think Pedro can play on the right. Am I right, Al? Or did he play? He played on the right, didn't he?
He can play on the right. You can play as a 10 as well. You can slot into midfield if we're really, really stuck. So he's a different type of player, which is something we need. He's one who can break lines, something we're not very good at. If a team go into a low block against us, we find it very difficult to break them down. He is someone who can break down low blocks, which is a nice option to have, I think.
We were saying on the podcast, John, about how David Moyes did a David Moyes tactic against us with Everton, where he just put 10 men like that in front of us, and we found it very hard to break them down. And like Al's saying, we need more creative players. Jacob Murphy does what he's told, and he does it well, and he's done it exceptionally well this season. He does what he's told. He tracks back, he crosses the ball in, he gets a few shots off. But I think we just need a bit more creativity.
Yeah, I agree. I think Everton on the day got the tactics spot on against us. They frustrated the life out of us, but when they broke in numbers and broke with pace, and they caused us an awful lot of problems on the break. You go on about Joe Pedro.
What do you think of him?
They don't just bring in good players. I think when you look at the players that they brought in, not only are they good players, but they're good characters as well. It's somebody who they feel will fit into the group of players that they've got, will settle in straight away. They're not going to bring anybody in who they feel is going to rock the boat, who's not going to be a good teammate, who's not going to settle in and going to work as hard as everybody else and do what everybody else does. So it's not just about going and buying, saying, oh, well, he's a good player, we'll go and get him. They go and do their homework on these players and go, yes, he's a good player, but how's his attitude? How hard does he work? How good a trainer is he? Will he follow team tactics? Will he do what he's told? All these things go into it. So it's not just about identifying a player and saying, yeah, we like him, he's a good player, we'll go and get him. Everything else about that player has got to be right as well.
Yeah.
100%. And as we said, we won't panic yet from a transfer window perspective. Plenty of time. There's loads going on. There's a lot going on upstairs as well, as we know. And I just don't think it's worth losing our minds about. I think the biggest thing for me is getting players in for pre-season when that starts. That's important, but that's still a little while out.
Not even for the start of pre-season, for the start of the tours going away. You don't mind someone. Yeah, that's when you really want them in. You want them in for the going away part.
All I want is Trafford, Gahey, Elanga, and Joe Pedro in the next 10 days.
I can't see us buying four. I can't see us buying 4 Premier League. Oh well, yeah, Premier League players. I can see us doing 2 and 2. It'll be.
You don't ask for much at all, Chris.
No.
Right, John. Before we let you go, we do need to just have a little chat about next season. Obviously, in the last day or two, we did have the Premier League fixtures released for next season. We'll actually put them on the screen here. I did want to ask you, John, for yourself, I suppose, is there any standout fixtures and or kind of runs or mini runs? It's a bit small on the screen there, I know, but is there any particular fixtures that stand out or a run of games that either you're looking forward to or that worry you? And needless to say, there's some Mackems down the road that'll be hanging about St. James's Park at some point.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult start for us. I think going to Villa on the opening day is a really difficult game for us, and then obviously Liverpool here the following week. So that is a tough start. I think everybody's eyes were, when's the first derby, and it falls at a time where, if I'm not mistaken, we will have a Champions League game that midweek before that game. You're just hoping that Champions League game is at home. You don't want to be traveling. Even if we are traveling, you don't want to be traveling too far. That's for sure. And then obviously you look at the Christmas period and Christmas and New Year period, and we always seem to get Manchester United around that time. But it's I don't think there's any real standout fixtures. I mean, obviously the 2 derbies are really important, but I think the start of the season's real tough for us. I think when you look at what we had at the start of last season, everybody went, "Oh, actually, that's a decent little start for us," and it didn't go to plan, and it didn't work out too well. So people are saying, "Oh, well, it's a difficult start for us," and one thing and another. But you've got to play these teams at some time, at some stage, and sometimes against the so-called better sides and the top sides, you're better off getting them early in the season before they've got into any sort of rhythm or got into their stride. I mean, Manchester City over the years, have been slow starters. You know, yes, they've won games, but their performance levels haven't been quite up to speed, and it takes them a little bit of time. So you got to play these sides. It is what it is. You know, it's not the easiest start in the world, but it's a season I think it's a season to look forward to. I really do, because of what we achieved last year. I think the Champions League as well is something really, really to look forward to, with the 8 games that we're going to have, with a different format and one thing and another. So yeah, it's a season that the closer it gets, the more you look forward to it, I think. And I think once you see the fixtures released, you go, we're not too far away from getting down to it and seeing what it's all about. And then, you know, all the excitement comes back again. So really looking forward to next season, I have to say. Yeah, the one point I would make is, when that time when everybody thought that we looked like we could finish second, I'm absolutely delighted that we didn't finish second, if I'm quite honest, because I think the expectation levels then would have gone absolutely through the roof. It would have gone mental. The fact that we've won a cup, we finished runners up, we can go on, and then all of a sudden we just sneak into a Champions League spot with the help of Manchester United. I think that lowered it a little bit to a degree, but those levels are still there, and those expectation levels are there, and so they should be. You know, they should be, because of what we achieved last season and what we did, and hopefully next season it'll be even better.
I mean, look, to be honest with you, I'm really worried. I know you don't like the pessimism corner, lads, but the top form teams from even at the whole of last season, or even the second half of last season, we've got Villa, Liverpool, we've got Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, who's our bogey team, Forest and Fulham. Okay, Leeds United away as well. You know, it's not a derby or anything like that, but it's a tough Saturday fixture away. So I'm really concerned about the first 9 games, if I'm honest. But this is why I was thinking that with the Champions League in on top of that, like, we're gonna have to do some trades here. We're gonna have to sell and get 5, 6 players in. We really need players.
Relax.
Yeah, we said don't panic. We said there's time.
I'm trying not to panic. I'm trying not to panic.
Why doesn't he? Don't worry, John. He never listens to us. There's no talking to him.
I'm just.
I
really
tell
worried.
you what, I'm not. I would definitely not as worried, because there's so much time. It's like, what are we? Middle of June. You know, there's a whole bunch of time before that opening game. But John, just listen to you speak about it, I'm absolutely buzzing for the next new season already. You know, just thinking about if we do add some signings, thinking about carrying on from last season, and of course the Champions League, which is going to bring me to my last question for you, John, and then we'll absolutely let you go. Myself and Alan did a little podcast. It's very early days, but we were talking about cities and/or clubs and stadiums we'd love to visit during this new Champions League campaign. If I was to ask you for one, is there a particular city or stadium / club that you would love to go for an away day to, whether it's one you have been to or haven't been to? Is there anyone that jumps out at you?
I'd love to go to the new Munich stadium.
The Allianz.
I'd love to go to the Bernabeu, since it's being redeveloped. And I'm not too sure whether Barcelona is going to be ready for the start of the next season, is it?
No, it's
I
not.
don't think it is, which is a shame. But
I will be there the following season. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we'll have to wait a couple of years for that. But either the Bernabeu or the Allianz Arena in Munich would be,
pretty special.
That'd be nice.
I will see you there, John. We'll be following you as well.
Because in order to win it, you've got to beat all these sides, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's it.
I can't wait. I think there's a lot of people anxiously have like tabs open for Ryanair and the Irish Mags Aer Lingus, and just, you know, waiting for fixtures to come out to go and snap up some flights.
We'll meet up with you, John. We'll meet up with you, John, in one of those Europe games. Yeah.
That'd be grand, yeah.
Look, we'll meet up with you, John. We'll go to a few museums, and, you know, go to a few cathedrals and a few libraries, and, you know, all
say a few prayers.
We're always saying a few prayers. John, thank you so much for joining us again. It's been a pleasure having you back on. Always welcome on the Irish Mags
Absolutely
show,
fantastic.
and a great for the
Thanks,
Irish
John.
Mags too.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Legend.
Thank you.
Thank you again, listeners, for tuning in. Of course, check out theirishmags.com. All the links down below, all of the socials. And we'll be back next week to see if Chris is still panicking about transfers and the like, because we have so much more to talk about. So until then, how are the lads? Slán go fóill. I'll see you all very soon. Take care, guys.
Slán.